opportunity to sit together in the congregation, to sense the presence of others whose lives move in quest of the same quality of illumination and understanding as we ourselves seek. It is so comforting to be preoccupied with ourselves, our needs, and all that those needs indicate in terms of the behavior of our lives, our own dreams, to which in the silence we may give wings with the hope that their stirring flight might bring to our leaden feet a lighter movement, a quicker step. It is so reassuring and comforting to be preoccupied with our little world and all the things that go to make it pulse and beat and throb. We tear ourselves away from such preoccupation as we wait in the silence before God. For there are those others far removed from us by land and sea and air, by cultures and civilizations and faiths and religions, who must be gathered in to sit beside us in the quietness. Those people who live in countries where the fever is high, where violence walks up and down the streets and is the companion of all the retreats of the human spirit. For all those who are denied food and shelter through no merit or demerit of their own, but whose lives are cast in hard and barren and arid places. For those lonely watchmen on the towers of our times, the prophets who speak and those who dare not speak, the statesmen who agonize, seeking some answer to the riddle by which their days are surrounded and their aspirations are choked and stifled. For all of those who have a broad and deep sense of responsibility for the total life, we bring them to sit beside us in the quietness. And, oh God, as we share our spirits with their spirits, gather us in by thy love and understanding, so that we shall have a new faith in life, and the great dread that hangs over us about tomorrow will be seen, penetrated, and transcended. And if by some little grace so great a benediction is ours, we give the quiet, muted praise of our distracted hearts. O God, our Father. Continuing our thinking together about the disciplines of the Spirit, and today we begin with commitment and its significance for any persons who may be interested in pursuing the basic idea on which we shall be working in this aspect of our discussion. I suggest two books to you. One is Kierkegaard's Purity of Heart, which is a classic study of this particular aspect of the religious struggle and the religious fulfillment. And the other is a play written about 25 years ago by Charles Morgan, and he calls it The Flashing Stream. This is a study of commitment from an angle that is more spiritual than religious, but very interesting. I want to read as a background a poem which suggests the heart of the idea. All night the fury of contending will. Get the picture. All night the fury of contending will raged in my head until my bed seemed the tormented world that devils fill. With anguish mixed and hungry violence, I waited for the day with muted sense. Too dry to weep, even my terror is dumb, as if while body waked, spirit were numb. At last, as though I lay upon a hill above a valley, choked by envenomed thorn, trackless and dark, I saw a spark strike down from heaven, whence a stream was born, which, flowing from the zenith to the sea, fierce and unswerving as the zeal of saints, had yet the saints reserved tranquility, and gave to earth its genius unconfined, the soundless passion of a single mind. Deep within every man, there is a profound sense with reference to the meaning of life itself. Now, this sense may say to him, in terms of the way in which this sense tutors the ideas in his mind, that life is finished, that life is fixed, that life is set, that it is hard, not in a moral sense, but in a constituent sense. Now, if a man deep within himself is convinced that this is the nature of life, then in his attitudes and in his functioning, he says that there isn't anything that he can do about anything. That life is as it is, and it cannot be altered. The slang phrase that we use is, this is the way the cookie crumbles. This is the phrase we use. Now, it is fortunate if such a man be circumstanced advantageously in society. It's a wonderful thing. If he is in a position that is secure and advantageous, it is a wonderful thing for him to know that, to be convinced that this is the way it is. And nothing will change. Nothing. Nothing can change. On the other hand, if he believes that life is dynamic, that if he believes that there is what may be called a fluid characteristic in life, of life, that it is moving, it is creative, it is essentially unfinished, then such a man knows, and the things that he does and the attitudes that he takes towards the order of his life, or the order in which his life is cast, that always there is riding to the fact a sense of alternative, a sense of option. And he knows that there is always something that can be done about life. Now, if such be his position, and in my judgment, this is the spiritual, this is the religious, this is the most fundamentally productive attitude, then commitment becomes the experience through which a man passes when deep within himself he makes a selection of values and proceeds to lift this selection of values into the dimension of the absolute. He says that with my life I can make the choice between that for which I am willing to stand and that against which I stand. Now, this is very fundamental. And commitment means to say yes totally to that to which you have said yes with the nerve center of your consent. Now, there are many things, external things, that may create commitment in this sense artificially. During periods of national crisis, for instance, when there is a common threat, there is a sense of commitment and a sense of dynamic that is inspired by such commitment on the part of all the people involved. Let me illustrate it simply. I talked with a man who is the patriarch of the Coptic Church. And he had spent some 25 years as a desert monk living in a cave in some part of the Sahara. And he talked about how life was so hard there, existence was so difficult, that every living thing tended to relax its self-regarding instinct and envelop the other forms of life around it so that together they might survive. For instance, he said, for many months my companion was a hyena. We lived together in this little hole on the side of the hill. He knew that life was hard, and I knew life was hard, and the only way that we could survive would be to get together. I found, for instance, that even the snakes in the desert and I began to have a quiet kind of communion. Now, it may be, you see, that what, as individuals, we are unable to do, unwilling to do, the externalities of our circumstances may force us to do. But commitment of this character is very limited in quality, because as soon as the pressure, the external pressure that galvanizes it into place is released, then the old behavior patterns reassert themselves, or tend to reassert themselves. Now, there are certain things which work against commitment, certain things. Sometimes we say that there is some evil something that has happened to me. You may, as a friend of mine, when he was a baby, his father dropped him, and his left leg and thigh were injured, so that as he grew into boyhood and manhood, he was permanently limited to movement by a crutch, a cripple. And for a long time, any thought in his mind which had to do with the possibility of his giving himself totally to some cause or purpose or movement, the significance of which would be more important than his own life, any time he was confronted with such a possibility, he reverted to the fact that he was a cripple. Until one day, he said, he stopped resisting this evil thing. He moved into it, penetrated it, and established an independence of it. He freed his inner life from the necessity to seek refuge from any surrender to anything other than his crippleness. And when you see him today, you remember, after seeing him and after talking to him, that he's crippled. This is what I mean. Sometimes we use other things to keep us from being willing to yield the nerve center of our consent. We say, there's nothing much to me. I'm not really very much. What I can do isn't much. What difference will it make if I do this or I do not? No one can possibly accept me and my gift, even though my surrender is absolute, and the nerve center of my consent is total, and I put at the disposal of it everything that I have. What I have is nothing. Rufus Jones tells about a farmer near his home in South China, Maine, who had a commitment, a very quiet thing, but it was to take the thing that the French represent, their kind of witness in their hostels in other countries, to take this to the Middle East. He was a so-called potato farmer, not quite illiterate, but almost. And when the first day meeting came, he stood in the midst of the little Quaker fellowship and gave his testimony that this was his concern, this was his commitment. And in the silence that followed, there was complete rejection. And everybody thought, he's just a poor, almost illiterate farmer. What on earth can he do with something as tremendous as this? He at least should be a college man, and he should have traveled over the world a little. He should know something about these people and so forth and so on. He isn't even sophisticated. So the Spirit did not say yes in the meeting. So he went to the quarterly meeting. And the quarterly meeting, the silence was dramatic and effective. Then he went to the yearly meeting. And at the yearly meeting, the same thing happened. And then he went to the 5-year meeting. And at the end of that time, the silence was just as it was before, an utter rejection. And then Rufus Jones says, the man sold his farm, went to the Near East, and established it. Now, all of this adds up to one very simple thing, with which I want to lay our foundation. That this is the kind of world in which the individual who is able to bring himself to a point of consent with reference to an end which to him is more significant than is his particular life, such a person moves at once on the receiving end of boundless energy, which becomes at his command that which makes of his little desire, his little energy, his little gift, a tremendous energy, a tremendous desire, a tremendous gift. Therefore, if where you sit this morning, you are saying to yourself that the tasks of life are so big and you are so little, that if you are saying that what is required is so great and what you have to give is so insignificant, if you are saying that this is the kind of world in which only a certain select persons are instruments in the hands of the living vitality and the living energy of the living God, may I suggest to you that where you are, if you are able to yield the nerve center of your consent to something which to you, as you are, is more important even than whether you live or die, then yield to it. And let the vast creative movement of the living Spirit of the living God course through you at the point of your commitment. And your strength is magnified. Your qualities become enlarged. And what you are able to do becomes not a sacrifice, but a sacrament. And this is the basis of the Christian doctrine, which insists that the heart and the mind of man must be surrendered to the kingdom of God, and all else flows from the absolutism of that kind of commitment. Leave us not alone, our Father, despite our sense of weakness and inadequacy, that thy Spirit may find in us nothing that blocks and hinders, but all that makes it free-flowing to the end that we may do thy thing as our thing. This is our prayer, our Father.